Today I want to answer some questions that I get and explain to you where we are and where some of these neighborhoods that I mentioned in these videos are. So we're going to show you the main things you need to know about our area. We're going to talk about some of the similar areas around us and then give you some specifics on some of these neighborhoods that will help you understand when you watch some of these other videos on where we are. First things first, we're going to give you just a general area of what Reno is and how to get around the Reno Sparks area. And for those of you that have been here or sat with me in person when you first come here the very first time, you know the areas I'm talking about, which is the McCarran Loop. So McCarran runs in a circle around Reno, and anything that is on that interior part of that circle typically is the older areas. It's the airport, downtown Reno, it's downtown Sparks. Now the other two freeways that we have are 80 that runs east and west. So 80 runs all the way to California, all the way east through Nevada. And then you've got 395 or 580, which sort of runs south and then it runs and it loops to the west through all the North Valleys. And those are the only freeways we have. And when you're coming off that main road there, you've got South Virginia Street that literally runs right through the middle of our downtown, right through the middle of town. And honestly, you could stay on it and drive it all the way south to Carson City. And so that's where we always start. I have a big map in our main conference room at the building. And when you come here, and a lot of you that are just trying to get a lay of the land to figure out eventually what part of town you want to live in, those are the kind of main reference points. And with those, you'll never get lost. Some of these surrounding cities that we do work in, Fernley, Dayton, Carson, I want to show you kind of where they are so that people can figure out what they are. So as you go east on 80, and it's about 35 minutes, say, from downtown, you have a city called Fernley. Halfway to Fernley is what's called USA Parkway. And USA Parkway is the area that's the industrial area that you see Tesla and a whole bunch of other companies that are out on that route. And if you were to drive on USA Parkway, it literally goes 20 minutes before you hit a roundabout. And then there's a lot of outlying areas that we rarely work in, but if you wanted to know about those, we could talk to you about those on another day. When you go east to Fernley, a lot of people that work out of USA Parkway looking for affordable housing will live in Fernley because they can drive back towards USA Parkway and it makes life a lot easier for those guys. If you were in Reno and you went south, you're again about another 25 or 30 minutes toward a city called Carson. Carson's our capital. It's got a lot of older properties. There are some new subdivisions being built there. But again, that's another area that's somewhat affordable. And if you keep going south through Carson, you're going to end up in Douglas County and you're going to be basically through Minden and Gardnerville, which a lot of people, if you've never heard of it, it's a really nice area. It's easy access to the south end of Lake Tahoe. And that kind of gives you a little bit of lay of the land. But as you come south from Reno to Carson, or you go east out to Fernley, then out, and it makes kind of a nice little square, is a town called Dayton. And out in Dayton, you can find similar stuff to Fernley and Carson. Of course, depending on where you work or what you're looking for, there's a golf course out there that's really nice. We had some people who just bought a house on the golf course. Those areas, we would have to walk you out there. They're not big communities, and it'd be easy to find your way around and know what neighborhoods are out there. If you go west towards California, Sacramento's a little bit over 2 hours. The Bay Area is roughly about 4 hours away. So it's not as far as people think. And that's part of why a lot of Californians will move here, because if they've got a lot of family and friends that are back in that direction, it is not that far. It is on 80. And the only thing you have to be careful of is in the wintertime, obviously driving over that mountain pass could be a little bit hectic. If you go 80 the other direction towards Salt Lake City, you're looking at about an 8-hour drive. Halfway, you're still in Nevada. You're going to stop at a place called Elko. And then you go a little further, you're going to be in Salt Lake City. If you go south, you're going to be about a 7-hour drive to Las Vegas. And then, of course, there's some other surrounding cities, whether you went north towards Boise or northwest towards Portland, which are going to be 6 and 8 hour drives. Or we've done it plenty of times. We've driven to the San Diego, LA area, and it's going to be anywhere from 8-9 hours, depending on where you're trying to finish up. So we are pretty centrally located. It's not hard to find these places, and it's the reason why a lot of people move to Northern Nevada. As we want to talk specifically about Reno, so when you're talking about the Loop, 80 running east and west, 395 running north and south, let's start on the south end of town. And if you want to live south, South Virginia, that runs right through the middle of town, is going to be the cutoff point. So when you live on the west side, way south, these are more of our high-end neighborhoods. It's really hard to find anything over there now, say under $800,000 or $900,000. There's a small condo complex called Fallen Leaf that you can find stuff in the 4s and 5s. There are some homes on the very close south end towards South Virginia Street that you can find some homes in the 8s and 900s, but not a whole lot. And over here, when we mention things like, let's start up at the top and work our way down Mount Rose Highway, when you talk about either Galena Forest, or you talk about Montreux, or you talk about Callahan Ranch, That's kind of on the one side of Mount Rose Highway. If you go onto the other side of Mount Rose Highway, you're going to see neighborhoods like Arrowcreek, Saddlehorn, Field Creek, and Southwest Vistas. And this is where the elevation starts to climb up. This is where a lot of these houses, the more you get up Mount Rose Highway and the more you get towards Galena Forest and Montreux or Arrowcreek, the more snow you're going to see, the more weather you're going to see. But again, this is the area when people call and say, hey, we want to live south and we're thinking about spending $1 million up to $4 or $5 million. This is typically where people go in that south end of town, okay? Now, if you jump across South Virginia Street, then there's some industrial areas and some businesses. But this is where you hear me mentioning the term the South Meadows. And the South Meadows is kind of built of three neighborhoods. You've got Double Diamond, you've got Damani Ranch, and you've got Curdy Ranch. And they're all slightly different, but for the most part, relatively the same. Curdy Ranch has houses that are a little more unique than the other two areas. The schools and everything are relatively new down there, and that area's only been there for 30 years. But most of the homes down in those areas are going to be under $1 million. Now, you can find some Toll Brothers 55 plus, or you can find some other builders in there that built some big homes that you can spend more than $1 million. But for me and my person, if you weren't in a 55 and over community and you were looking to spend well over $1 million, most people are on the other end of South Reno versus in that South Meadows area. And we did a whole video about the South Meadows, and most of these neighborhoods have their own separate videos that you can go look at and find those. If you wanted to live in the South and you needed something more affordable, you can go into an area called Donner Springs. And Donner Springs on that McCarran Loop starts to work your way more towards the east. You've got a lot of older homes built in the 60s and 70s. And as it loops around, you've also got a neighborhood just to the side of that that's called Hidden Valley. And Hidden Valley, for the most part, is older homes on both ends of Hidden Valley. There's also going to be some new construction or newer, more of the stucco tile roof homes. And there is a country club in there. There's Hidden Valley Country Club. And so for those of you that are golfers that don't want to be in Montreux or Arrowcreek, that is another decent area that you can be in. And that's where it changes from Reno to Sparks. So there's Southeast Connector, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But if you go back to that south end of Reno, there's also on the west side, there's Collin Ranch. Then there's areas when you come in on Plum Lane on the inside of South McCarran where there's a lot of old school neighborhoods that people are looking for homes that are 50, 60, 70 years old, that maybe there's neighborhoods in California that you're feeling you want those type of homes. You're going to be on the inside of the loop. And then as you keep going up the west side, you're going to cross the freeway, you're going to cross Mayberry, and you're going to end up into what's called Northwest Reno and Somerset. Somerset is going to be much more like what you see in the South Meadows. It's got lower end condos and townhomes that you can get in there for affordable reasons. And then you can also have custom homes that are in there. And I know there's been some Toll Brothers homes that I've sold in there that are well over $1 million. So you can kind of find those all the way on that same side. And then if you're on 80 and you're going west, you will also see areas like Verdi and Mogul that are a little more unique, that we don't do a lot of business in there. They're not huge areas, but they're areas where people, if you live in California, might be areas that work for you. So Reno, as you loop back around, for the most part, is 3/4 of town. The only other area of Reno we didn't really talk about yet is when you're on 395 and you go north, which are the North Valleys. So you have Lemon Valley and Golden Valley, Stead, and you also have Cold Springs. And those are typically for people that they're affordable, affordability issues. So if you're looking to spend $400,000 or $500,000, there's a lot of areas that you can go off the freeway. And then, especially in Lemon Valley and Golden Valley, the further you get off the freeway, then you can go find horse property and acreage, and it goes out 20 miles. Like when you're just past Stead before Cold Springs, Red Rock Road goes 20 miles. And then there's all kinds of more horse property and big acreage out in those valley areas for people that want big barns or extra outbuildings or whatever it might be, or maybe just have lots of toys, you want to be able to park things. You can go out in those North Valleys areas. If you're someone who's thinking about moving to Northern Nevada, do me a favor. Check the link in the description below and click for a copy of our free buyer's guide. It gets you a lot of great information for all the things you need to do to get your journey started. So now let's talk about Sparks for a little bit. And here are the kind of pros and cons of that is when you're on 80, pretty much all of Sparks, other than the industrial area, is on the north side of Highway 80. And you have three roads. You have Pyramid Highway, you have Sparks Boulevard, and you have Vista Boulevard. And all three of those run north and south, and eventually Sparks Boulevard loops back into Pyramid Highway. And this was always the big negative to those areas was it was traffic. So if you were coming in the mornings for work or going out in the afternoons, it was a pain in the rear to get in these areas. But Pyramid Highway has definitely gotten a lot wider, a lot bigger. One of the biggest intersections in all of Reno is basically that Pyramid Highway when you turn right off of McCarran. It is now 3 turn lanes and things 6 lane wide. It's crazy how much is out there. And as soon as you come up over Pyramid Highway now, you can pretty much see that whole area, and there's tons of shopping, there's tons of stuff out there that didn't used to be that way. Now, Pyramid Highway, you can literally drive out on that thing 20 miles and you get to places like Spanish Springs. And if you go further, then you get, properties like I was telling you about in all those North Valleys areas where you're on acreage and horse property, and it goes pretty much as far as you want to go out, all the way out to Pyramid Lake, which we don't work out that far, and I haven't had any clients look out that far, but if you're someone wanting to be a little more isolated and still only be maybe an hour-ish from the airport, you can go out that way for a long way. But if you come back in and it's mostly off Vista Boulevard, the closer you get back to McCarran, there's some older neighborhoods on the inside and outside close to McCarran. And then you've got DeAndrea, you're gonna go out towards Wingfield Springs. We did a video where we showed all that stuff out there by the Golden Eagle Regional Park. So there's a lot of good housing, and it looks much more like you see in the South Meadows, much more stucco, tile roof, all kinds of different sizes. You can find affordable housing out there, as well as you can find custom big housing out in those areas. Sparks doesn't have as many specific neighborhood names that you're gonna see in the Reno area, but if you go out that direction and then you find a street called Los Altos Parkway runs right through kind of the other direction on Sparks. You have Kylie Ranch, which we just did a recent video on. And so those Sparks areas, there's a lot of good stuff out there. The hard part is the further you go out towards Spanish Springs, the more difficult it is to get back to the freeway. So for some people, they don't want to go out that far, but you get a lot of good new construction. And then the last little two areas we want to talk about are sort of the downtown for Sparks and for Reno, where the casinos are for the most part in downtown Reno, which is just south of the university, or the downtown casinos that you're going to see in those Sparks areas. There are high rises, there are townhomes, there's lots of places to rent. And as you go from downtown Reno to Midtown, those have kind of been the areas that have been sort of redone, that if people are looking for more of that younger vibe, those are the kind of areas that people are going to look in as far as living for older, high-rise type of stuff. Many of these neighborhoods and places that we're talking about, we have specific videos about those neighborhoods. So hopefully you can see where they are and what you're looking for. The first questions we typically ask people, because a lot of these areas won't make sense for certain people, is if you know your price point and you know if you're looking for older or newer, or if you're looking for big acreage or small, we can typically narrow this down pretty quickly for you as to where you're going to be. And then from there, you can start to look real close at the neighborhood you want to be in. So if you're someone who's thinking about moving to Northern Nevada, check out this video we did right here about 20 reasons why living here is awesome.